And a very happy Monday to you at 12:08 in the West. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wangs at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, over the weekend, the government did not shut down. A last-minute bipartisan deal went through both houses of Congress and was signed by President Joe Biden, who in the signing ceremony lamented that we're going to have to do this all over again in 45 days.
This agreement today, while averting an immediate crisis, ends in, I guess it's 45 days now. It's already moving down just before Thanksgiving. Quite frankly, I'm sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of the brinksmanship. And so are the American people.
Now, it would be interesting to hear that statement where he tags in Holly Mitchell or Fran Drescher to give the quite frankly before he finishes a statement.
Okay. I think we can do that. Let's hear President Joe Biden.
I guess it's 45 days now. It's already moving down just before Thanksgiving.
Quite frankly,
I'm sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of the brinksmanship.
Oh, we're 8 years old.
Quite frankly.
800-222-KABC is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. Well, we knew that Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, would not sit on his decision long in terms of who would be replacing the late Senator Dianne Feinstein, representing California in the United States Senate. That being said, I didn't think he would make his appointment before she was put in the ground. But, Randy, he did just that.
Gavin moved quick and has appointed Laphonza Butler to be the brand new senator from the state of California. She was the head of Emily's List, which is a Democratic political organization, and now she'll be one of our two senators in the state of California.
Okay, a couple of things jump out at me at Laphonza Butler. And up until yesterday, I had never heard her name before. I had never seen her on television before. I know absolutely nothing about her.
Never heard the name before. Apparently, she was an advisor to Kamala Harris, and she used to be in charge of one of the SEIUs.
Okay. If we don't know who she is, and we cover California politics for a living, the average person has no clue who she is either. As it turns out, there's a reason that we don't know who she is. Apparently, she doesn't even live in the state of California.
Google it.
Her registration is currently in Maryland because she lobbies in Washington. She's from California, but she does not currently live in California. But I guess that's something she can change with a quick form and say, oh, now I live in California.
I don't think she's from here. I think she's from the South, and I think at some point she moved here. I don't know how long she lived here. She clearly lived here at some point in her life, but then she moved to Maryland. And you look at all of her bios that were up after Newsom made the information public, and all of her current bios have her listed as a Maryland resident.
You're right. She was born in Mississippi. She moved to California in 2009 and was president of the SEIU Long-Term Care Workers up until 2016. In 2018, Jerry Brown appointed her to be the regent of the University of California, but then she helped in Kamala's 2020 presidential campaign and has been in Maryland since then.
Okay, so she lived here for a little over 10 years.
Yeah.
As an adult to come here to work. Okay, so apparently there's no one who actually lives currently in the state of California who was qualified for this job, so Newsom had to go out of state. And this is not the first time that this has happened. I don't know if you remember this, Randy, but there was a vacancy on the California Supreme Court back when Jerry Brown was governor, and he did the same thing. He went out of state, found someone that didn't live here, and nominated them to sit on the California Supreme Court. I don't know why in the world you would do that. And I don't know for a bunch of reasons. First and foremost, let's talk about this. California Democrats, people who are elected to office, have the exact opposite problem of California Republicans. California Republicans don't have enough winnable offices for them to make a career out of being in elected office. There are very few Republican assembly districts or Senate districts or congressional districts. Republicans can't win statewide races. They can't win citywide races in big cities to become mayors or city attorneys or controllers. They control only one seat on the LA County Board of Supervisors. If you're a Republican in California, you have very limited options. For Democrats, the opposite is true. However, they do have their own problems. There are a number of offices that Democrats could win in theory, but because there are so many of them, they're all bumping into one another. You get termed out of the state assembly and you want to go for an LA City Council seat, you may have to run against two other members of the assembly for that seat. And if you lose, you're not a somebody, you're a someone who used to be a somebody. And that makes it very hard for you to find your next office. Which is why whenever one of these jobs opens up and the governor has the ability to make an appointment, from their point of view, they just want somebody in their world to get the appointment. Let's say he gave it to Anthony Rendon, who's the former Speaker of the Assembly. Fine, Anthony Rendon becomes U.S. Senator. That opens up his assembly seat for someone else. Let's say he appoints Fiona Ma to be the U.S. Senator, the state treasurer. Okay, that opens up the state treasurer for someone else. So you're in the assembly, you run for state treasurer, someone on the city council runs for the assembly, and more people have more jobs. If you were to talk to any Democrat in Sacramento, that's how they would tell you this should work.
That's how it worked when he appointed Padilla, because Padilla was Secretary of State and they got to appoint somebody for that.
That's right. So if he's going out of state and appointing someone else for that job, and he's not taking care of his people in Sacramento, that means he is totally done with them. Because he just disrespected all of them in a huge way, and he doesn't particularly care. This appointment has nothing to do with the representation of the people of California. This has everything to do with him becoming president. And it goes back to what we've talked about before. In his mind, in his world, there is no such thing as local. It's only national. That's the only thing he sees right now, which is why he allows these problems in California, like our insurance crisis and homelessness and crime, to just fester. He doesn't care about any of that. He wants to talk about Donald Trump. He wants to talk about the presidential race. He wants to talk about the government shutdown. He wants to talk about abortion. He wants to talk about all of those subjects because in his mind, he's a national figure. He's not a statewide elected official in California. He's bigger than that. And because he's bigger than that, his audience is bigger than us. So this pick had nothing to do with you and me and everyone out there listening. And it had everything to do with him becoming president of these United States. One of the campaign promises that he made when he was running during the recall was that if a vacancy were to occur, if Dianne Feinstein were to retire or die in office, he would appoint a black female. So he had to fulfill that promise. And he was getting threatened all over the place this weekend in the LA Times and elsewhere. You better follow through with that promise. And then they changed it to, and it better not be a caretaker. It better be someone who can run for that office and keep it. Because if they're a caretaker, that's a short-term appointment, and we're going to lose that seat to somebody else, probably Adam Schiff. However, I don't think this appointment is meant for black audiences in the way that most of us assumed it would not that long ago. Emily's List, which is the group that this woman runs, is a group that is called Early Money Grows Like Yeast. and they exist to support Democratic women who are pro-choice. It's essentially a pro-abortion organization. This appointment is to bolster his credentials among the pro-choice crowd that he is the most pro-choice governor in the country. It has everything to do with that. Because if he runs for president, if something happens to Joe Biden and they need to replace Joe Biden, Gavin Newsom wants to run on abortion. Because abortion kept the Republicans from winning in a red wave in the last election and saved the hide of the Democrats. He believes that 2024 would work out better for Democrats if the subject that was front and center is abortion. And what better way to make abortion front and center than to appoint the woman that heads Emily's list to a U.S. Senate seat? That was interesting to me. I'll tell you what else was interesting. She's not saying if she's going to run for a full term.
No, and there were no stipulations when he made the appointment, even though he was saying it was going to be caretaker, because Barbara Lee complained about that when he appointed Laphonza Butler. She could run for the seat. Now, the filing deadline is soon, but she absolutely right now could run for the seat, assuming that she's registered to vote in California.
But wouldn't you make the announcement right away? She's generating all kinds of news today. If you put out a tweet and say, I'm the only black woman in the U.S. Senate and I live to fight for abortion, click here and donate, she would have a 7-figure haul today. Because she is the news. Why wouldn't you make that announcement? I think she was caught flat-footed. And I think that's the reason why she didn't change all of her biographies that said that she's a Maryland resident. Wouldn't you take that down from all of your social media accounts and all of your biographies the second you figure out that you're going to be the one appointed?
You get all your ducks in a row, but this thing moved fast. I mean, Feinstein died Friday morning.
The other thing that jumped out at me was that she said that she was nominated by Newsom for this position. She was not nominated by Newsom for this position. This position does not require her to be confirmed by the California Senate, by the U.S. Senate, or anyone else. It's not a nomination. It's an appointment. The minute she puts her hand on the Bible, she is a senator representing California, assuming she switches her voter registration from Maryland to California. So maybe the reason that she's not making the announcement that she's running and that she's not raising money is because she hasn't filled out the form yet, switching her registration from Maryland to California.
She better already have a place here or she's going to be on Zillow all day.
Why would that not be the first thing that you do? I don't know. If I was the one that was nominated, or appointed, I should say, by Gavin Newsom, I would change my registration if I was not a registered California voter. That's like the first thing that you have to have. You have to be over a certain age. What is it, 26, 27? No, 30, I think.
Yeah, 25 for the House, 30 for Senate, 35 for President.
Okay. So you have to be 30 years of age. You have to be a legal U.S. citizen. You don't have to have been born here like you do to be president. And you need to be a registered voter in the state of California. She only checks 2 out of the 3 boxes. So I don't understand that. The other situation that's going on right now is whether she knows it or not, Barbara Lee's U.S. Senate run is DOA.
She won't be speaking for me?
No. She is absolutely donezo. There is no space in this race left for Barbara Lee if the incumbent runs for re-election. And I'm not quite sure that Katie Porter will be competitive either. She has a congressional seat that might be won by a Republican this time around, so there's no guarantee that she would even win re-election to that. And, of course, we had redistricting at the 2020 census. So places like Huntington Beach are in that district, and that's a tough district for her. And then you have Adam Schiff, who is leading in all of the polls pretty consistently, who I would imagine isn't going anywhere. But if you're Barbara Lee or you are Katie Porter, you might be thinking right now about getting out of this race and doing something else. And we've seen that happen before. In 2010, Tom Campbell originally was running, I believe, for U.S. Senate. He was a Republican congressman from San Jose. And then he switched from U.S. Senate to governor to run against Meg Whitman in that primary because he thought he had a better chance at winning that office. We have a gubernatorial race that's going to be on the ballot in 2026, and Gavin Newsom is termed out. He can't run for another term. So it's possible if you're Barbara Lee or Adam Schiff or Katie Porter and you don't want to have to run against an incumbent, you can just get out of the U.S. Senate race, move over to the governor's race, and run for that. That's a possibility. Because if this new incumbent chooses to run for re-election, then Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats have an obligation to do whatever it takes so that she wins. They have a policy of financially supporting all of their incumbents running for re-election. So it wouldn't just be her raising money from the abortion groups and the people that she has worked with in the past, the unions and whatnot, but the entire Democratic caucus would be behind her, and they'd be going nuclear on Adam Schiff and Katie Porter and Barbara Lee because they will do whatever it takes to protect one of their own against someone who would then be trying to take out an incumbent Democratic U.S. senator. It's also going to be tricky for Adam Schiff and Katie Porter because the Democratic Party is now all about identity politics. Everything with them is identity. Sex, race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, whatever the case may be. And they're already peppered with questions on a seemingly daily basis about running against Barbara Lee and taking this seat away from a black female.
That's my favorite part of every interview that Porter and Schiff do is, why aren't you a black woman?
Yes. And so far, they've been able to answer the question without that question doing too much damage to them. However, it's going to be different if she's the incumbent and she's the only black, Democratic, gay woman in the U.S. Senate, and you're trying to take it from her. It's not that you're competing with her for the same slot. It's you want to take something away from her and away from the people that she represents. The framing of that question is going to change to Adam Schiff and Katie Porter, and it's going to have sharper edges. And I don't know how they answer that question because they're not trying to appeal to people like me. I'm not going to vote for them. I don't like their politics. But the people who are open to voting for them, boy, you better answer that question correctly or you're going to be in big trouble. So this is where we are with that appointment. And as all of this is going on, poor Dianne Feinstein's getting lost in the shuffle. She died on Friday. It's Monday. And the news cycle is Dianne who?
She had her weekend. Time to move on.
Well, I think I told you this. I was booked on CNN on Friday morning to talk about Dianne Feinstein. The guest before me was threatening Newsom 15 ways from Sunday that he better appoint a black female or else. I'm booked to talk about Feinstein. They come to me, I say good morning, and they go to Chuck Schumer at the U.S. Senate.
They moved on, They had you booked at 7 o'clock, and they moved on at 7:01.
That's right. My shortest appearance ever on CNN. Good morning. The only 2 words I said.
I mean, it is classless and it's crass, but all people have been talking about when it comes to Feinstein for the past 2 years is when she's going to drop dead.
That's right. And it's interesting also that the only member of Congress I saw that was on to talk about Dianne Feinstein was John Garamendi, who she was close to. The rest of them wouldn't go on TV because they've been saying nasty things about her without attribution for the last 5 years. So there you have it. California has a new U.S. Senator, and she's a Maryland resident. You want to email the show? You can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you want to listen to us after we sign off the air at 3 o'clock, that's easy to do.
That's right. Download the new KABC app. Search for 790 KABC or KABC AM in the Apple App Store or the Android Store, and you will have the easiest way ever without cluttered, nonstop commercials and pop-up ads to listen to the stream of this station whenever you want and podcasts of The John Phillips Show. The KABC app is easy to use. It works with CarPlay. I use it now. Check it out, the KABC app. Of course, you can also get the podcast on Apple and iHeart and the website, but the app is really the best way to go. The KABC app. Check it out.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Well, let's do that right now. 790 KABC welcomes Mariah Carey. Merry Christmas, one and all, at the Hollywood Bowl on November 17th. Tickets are on sale Friday at Ticketmaster.com, but right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets are furnished by Live Nation. Good luck dialing.
I don't know if any of you have been following this story, but Los Angeles is not the only county with the Soros district attorney in charge. There is a Soros district attorney in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and there is a local reporter there for the newspaper named Josh Kruger, who reports on the quote-unquote vulnerable populations of Philadelphia. And he was a big defender of Larry Krasner, who is the DA there, and a big defender of Philadelphia, would go after people who would talk about the spike in crime and lawlessness and how dangerous the city has become. He was killed in his home over the weekend by someone, criminal, with a gun. He was shot 7 times and passed away at the age of 39. Of course, the policies that were employed by this district attorney emboldened criminals and kept them outside of prison so they can do what they do best, which is break the law. Here in Los Angeles, things just got more dangerous today because, Randy, today is the first day of zero bail.
That's right. For a whole bunch of different crimes, mostly misdemeanors and I have to use air quotes, non-violent felonies, which includes a lot of actually violent felonies, you will now be, if you're arrested, booked and released or cited and released, and only in special circumstances do you get to have a meeting with the magistrate judge where maybe you can get held. But no more do we have the cash bail process before an arraignment. You are to be arrested and to be put back out on the street, and maybe, just maybe, you'll come back for your court date.
For more on this, here's KCAL.
Let's see. KCAL. Here we go.
LA County's controversial zero bail policy goes into effect today. It eliminates the existing cash bail system for most crimes.
And many cities are pushing back, claiming the policy is a step backwards when it comes to tackling crime. KCAL News reporter Lori Perez here with more.
Candidly, enough is enough.
Whittier's city leaders say LA County's zero bail policy makes 0 sense.
That's not
I
bad.
like that writing.
That's not bad.
Zero bail policy makes 0 sense. They're worried how the new pre-arraignment release protocols, or PARP policy, allows some suspects of nonviolent or non-serious crimes to be cited or booked and released instead of held on a cash bond while they await charges or a trial.
And hopefully they show up for their hearing there's no tracking of them. The system right now is set up so that if somebody does something and they're cited and released, they could go out and commit another crime, and maybe the new agency is not even going to be aware of it.
They're echoing concerns shared by leaders of 11 other cities, which joined Whittier Friday in filing a lawsuit to block the policy. They say locals have flooded their offices with concerns.
When are places like Whittier just going to find a way to become a part of Orange County?
I bet you they're looking into it, because you either have to beat Gascon, but see, you have other problems with LA County government. That Board of Supervisors is nuts. They're the ones that voted to shut down Men's Central Jail. The fake doctor is nuts. She's the one that shut down their economy forever. You can't escape the tentacles that bad county government now have that go into cities that otherwise would function. It's not just Whittier. Glendora is a fine city. Claremont is a fine city. Laverne is a fine city. All of these places are just trying to operate and run their government and do their thing, and LA County is trying their best to kill them off.
There's a dynamic of fear from our residents. They don't understand all this. They are concerned. They already have concerns about what Gascon is not doing.
Hey, Gascon, you got a shout out in this story.
Quite frankly.
And so now they have even a greater fear, like, oh, someone's going to come steal my car and they're not even going to be in jail. I'm afraid.
But some who support the changes argue a zero bail system actually increases public safety.
How?
They think that this increases public safety because it's quote-unquote accountability. They don't want to say, we'll let criminals do whatever they want because they're oppressed and you need to check your privilege. But if they do catch them when they break the law, they just cite and release, and that way they've quote-unquote handled it.
By relying less on a suspect's ability to pay and more on considering their risk to the public or victim.
This is going to be a real bad day if you're one of the 100 bail bondsmen on Van Nuys Boulevard.
Oh, what are those going to become? Pot shops?
And more on
There's already 100 of those on Van Nuys Boulevard.
and more on considering their risk to the public or victim. David Slayton, LA Superior Court Executive Officer, spoke to the Board of Supervisors last week.
Of sexual offenses, crimes involving guns, crimes against children, crimes against elderly. These are just some of the examples of offenses where individuals before were able to pay money to get out of jail, but instead a magistrate will review those offenses to make sure that conditions are set appropriately based upon that individual's risk.
But you notice he's not saying that they're not getting out. No, they're just going to get out with an ankle monitor.
That's right. This is the Orwellian world that we live in, where whatever's actually going to happen, they name it the opposite.
Critics of the cash bail system say it favors the rich over the poor, disproportionately keeping black and brown suspects behind bars, missing work or obligations, sometimes losing custody or housing while they wait to be arraigned, and in the end, sometimes never even charged. Supervisor Holly Mitchell says money bail does not prevent crime.
We can always count on her for that kind of reasoned response.
Quite frankly, we want to make sure we are releasing the right people, and our previous bail system didn't guarantee that.
So instead, we're going to release everybody.
Yes, that's accountability.
We could release people who could pay their way out. It's really dangerous for us to conflate bail with accountability. I am equally offended if someone who posted bail commits another crime. This notion of they were released in zero bail and they committed a crime, I'm offended. I'm offended if somebody recidivates and they posted bail.
Yeah, but then we get to collect that bail.
That's right.
There is an extra consequence for reoffending if you're out on bail, is that then that bail is rescinded and now you owe the bail bondsman $50,000.
That's right. And usually you have to put your house up, or one of your relatives have to put their house up, or you've got to go into your bank account, whatever the case may be. There's teeth to it.
The mayor says they have asked for the lawsuit to be transferred to Orange County Superior Court since it does involve the LA County court system. In Whittier, I'm Lori Perez, KCAL News.
Yeah, you have to do that. You have to take it outside of that county. You can't count on the DA. You can't count on the judges. You can't count on the juries. Find an excuse to move it somewhere else.
It's going to be a tough hill to climb, though, because you're going to have every system of government blaming each other for this policy because the Board of Supervisors says, well, it's the courts. The courts say, no, this is something that the legislature passed that we're just complying with. It goes around in a circle, and everyone's to blame, but nobody's to blame.
That's right. And at some point, they'll all agree that the reason that crime is going up is because of climate change.
Rising crime in California.
If you'd like to shoot us an email, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Lots of emails coming in about L.A. County's new zero bail policy. Most of the emails too filthy to be read on the air. Here's a clean one from Caroline. These people are completely crazy if they think this is going to keep the county safe.
No kidding.
Here's a fun email, by the way. Earlier in the show, we played you what it would sound like if Biden was tag teaming with Holly Mitchell to talk about the shutdown. Chuck writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com and wants to know what it would sound like if Biden tag teamed with Holly Mitchell and threw in some Janice Hahn. Let me turn off the music first before I play the bit. Okay, here's what that would sound like.
I guess it's 45 days now. It's already moving down. Just before Thanksgiving.
Quite frankly,
I'm sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of the brinksmanship. And so are the American people.
That's your final warning.
Well, that sounds a lot more dynamic than the first one.